In the heart of Afghanistan, within the desolate, dramatic cliffs of the Bamiyan Valley, two gigantic figures once stood guard, silent witnesses to 1,500 years of history. These were the Bamiyan Buddhas, the larger ones reaching 55 meters, the tallest standing Buddha statues in the world. They were not merely carved onto the rock face. They were monumental architectural negative spaces carved into the sandstone cliff, their forms shaped by the very essence of the mountain. They were a fusion of Indian, Hellenistic, and Central Asian artistic traditions, a testament to the thriving cultural exchange along the Silk Road. Yet, on a fateful day in March 2001, these towering masterpieces, which survived the fall of empires, the rise of Islam, and centuries of earthquakes, were targeted and systematically obliterated by explosive charges. How could such a universal symbol of peace and devotion become a symbol of radical destruction? This episode explores the architectural ingenuity of these colossal forms and the profound global cultural devastation caused by their deliberate political annihilation.
Unlike the Library of Alexandria, whose demise was gradual and shrouded in mystery, the destruction of the Bamiyan Buddhas was a public, documented, and chilling act of architectural prescription. It was a deliberate, televised attempt to wipe away history, to impose an ideological ban on a physical structure. This act was met not just with condemnation from the West, but with profound sorrow and outrage from Islamic scholars, historians, and governments across the Middle East and Asia, who viewed the Buddhas as part of their shared cultural heritage, a testament to Afghanistan's complex pre-Islamic past. This destruction forced the world to confront a difficult question. When architecture holds deep cultural meaning, does its destruction constitute a cultural genocide? We will analyze the political maneuvering that led to the execution of these masterpieces and reveal why their absence now speaks louder than their presence ever could.
Welcome back to Vanished Grandeur. Following our look at the intellectual loss of Alexandria, we now turn to a physical and spiritual void, the empty niches of Bamiyan. Our focus today is on the Gandharan style, a unique artistic blend that was expressed in these two major statues, Salsal, the light shines through the universe, and Shamama, the Queen Mother. These figures were not just statues, they were sophisticated architectural marvels that utilized the inherent strength of the rock while being finished with mud, straw, and brilliant plaster, then painted and gilded to shimmer in the harsh sun. This complex construction method ensured their longevity, tragically making their destruction a complicated, multi-week undertaking, emphasizing the cruel determination of their destroyers. The sheer scale and remote location made them a truly unique and now tragically lost architectural landmark.
To appreciate the magnitude of the loss, one must understand Bamiyan's context. The valley was a vital staging post on the northern route of the Silk Road, linking India and China with Central Asia and the West. Between the 3rd and 7th centuries CE, it became a major Buddhist monastic center, with thousands of monks living in caves carved into the cliff face. The construction of the colossal Buddhas was an act of profound devotion and civic pride. The cliffs themselves became a canvas for this thriving religious architecture, a massive outdoor gallery. This thriving cultural synthesis, where Eastern religion met Hellenistic form, was possible precisely because the area was historically tolerant and commercially central. The Buddhas were not foreign invaders. They were an authentic, organic expression of Afghanistan's deep history, a fact the destroyers attempted to erase, effectively banning a millennium and a half of history in a single devastating act.
The Buddhas were masterpieces of negative space engineering. The artist first carved the outline and major forms deeply into the sandstone cliff. The inner core was rock,
The detailed, flowing drapery of the robes was built up using a technique called stucco, a mixture of mud, chalk, and straw applied over a network of wooden pegs and scaffolding fixed into the rock. This allowed for intricate detail and expressive posture, a method rarely used on this scale. The large Buddha, Salsal, was originally surrounded by a scaffolding system that allowed pilgrims to walk up and around the head, looking out over the valley, creating an immersive architectural experience. This blend of carving, subtractive architecture, and modeling, additive architecture, made them structurally resilient and aesthetically dynamic.
The cliff face was not just a pedestal, it was a functioning monastic city. Thousands of caves surrounded the Buddhas, some painted with vibrant frescoes that also represented the Gandharan style. These caves served as dwelling places, meditation cells, and places of worship. The two niches housing the main Buddhas acted as massive mandorlas, or halos, framing the figures and concentrating the sunlight, creating a spectacular effect at dawn and dusk. The architectural design integrated the spiritual path. Pilgrims moved through the valley, into the cliff caves, and eventually up to the feet of the colossal statues, a deliberate progression through sacred space. The Buddhas were the capitals of this vast, dispersed architectural complex, directing the flow and focus of spiritual life.
Throughout their existence, the Buddhas faced numerous threats, but their architectural resilience always prevailed. Genghis Khan passed through the valley in the 13th century, but the Buddhas remained intact. Later Islamic rulers, while often opposing figural representation, generally respected the statues, viewing them as historical artifacts rather than objects of current worship. In the 17th century, the Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb allegedly tried to destroy them with cannons, but the massive scale of the rock made this impossible. Their survival against early, sporadic, and technologically limited attempts at destruction only underscores the irony of their final fate. They were protected by their sheer size, their remote location, and crucially, by the prevailing cultural acceptance of their existence as part of the landscape.
The period of modern destruction began with a radical shift in political and ideological control. Throughout the 1990s, the Taliban regime viewed the statues as idols that violated a strict interpretation of Islamic law. Initially, local commanders were tolerant, valuing them as tourist attractions and historical artifacts. However, in 2001, Mullah Muhammad Omar, the supreme leader, issued a fatwa condemning the statues and ordering their destruction. This was a clear political mandate to impose an ideological ban on pre-Islamic cultural architecture. The decision was not driven by popular demand, but by the desire of the leadership to demonstrate ideological purity and political power on the global stage, using the destruction of a massive physical structure as a potent visual tool.
The deliberate and systematic nature of the destruction highlighted the sheer difficulty of demolishing such solid architectural forms. It took several weeks of effort. First, anti-aircraft guns and tanks were used, but these only damaged the lower parts of the figures. Realizing the architectural stability, the Taliban then resorted to laying mines and dynamite charges directly into the remaining structure, targeting the weakest points, the joints between the carved rock and the stucco detailing. The final destruction was achieved through a series of massive controlled explosions, turning the colossal figures into dust and rubble. The niches remain as deep, concave wounds in the mountainside, a lasting architectural scar and a reminder of the power of explosives against cultural heritage. The destruction provoked a global wave of indignation, but the most significant reaction came from within the Muslim world. Organizations like UNESCO and leaders from nations including Iran, Pakistan, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia voiced strong opposition.
They argued that the destruction was an act of ignorance, contrary to Islamic teachings, which generally respect historical monuments and prohibit the destruction of idols that are no longer actively worshipped. This demonstrated that the Taliban's act was not a religious imperative, but a political act of architectural terrorism. The Islamic world mourned the loss because the Buddhas represented a shared history of coexistence and cultural richness, proving that this was a political ban imposed by an extremist minority against a shared human treasure.
The physical presence of the Buddhas once defined the Bamiyan landscape. Their absence now defines the valley just as powerfully. The niches are not merely empty spaces, they are monumental architectural voids, negative space that evokes the shape of what was lost. They serve as a permanent, chilling monument to their own destruction, a kind of anti-architecture. The surrounding complex of caves and frescoes, damaged during the demolition, lost its focal point. Pilgrims and visitors now stand where the feet of the great Buddha once were, experiencing a sense of profound loss, a deliberate cancellation of sacred space. The architectural void is a constant reminder of the vulnerability of cultural memory when faced with political violence.
Even before the Buddhas were destroyed, the accompanying frescoes in the surrounding caves were under threat from weather, looting, and decay. After the demolition, the international community focused on saving the fragments of these delicate mural paintings, which represent some of the earliest examples of oil painting techniques, predating European oil painting by centuries. The architectural effort shifted from preserving the colossal statues to stabilizing and protecting the fragile cave structures and the plaster fragments, an attempt to save the smaller, more intimate architectural expressions that were integrated with the grander, now vanished masterpieces. This ongoing rescue operation highlights the interconnectedness of the site's various architectural elements.
Since 2001, there have been massive international efforts focused on what is termed anastylosis, reconstructing a monument from its remaining parts, or, failing that, digital preservation. Teams of experts, predominantly German and Japanese, have sifted through tons of rubble, identifying thousands of fragments belonging to the original Buddhas. Some proposed full physical reconstruction, while others advocated for leaving the niches empty as a memorial. A powerful compromise involves projection mapping, digitally recreating the figures in light within the niches, temporarily bringing the lost architecture back to life each night, a technological testament to the enduring power of the original architectural form.
The question of what to do with the empty niches is a profound architectural and ethical debate. Should the statues be fully rebuilt? Those who argue against it suggest that the empty space is now a monument in itself, a testament to the atrocity, and that a modern reconstruction would diminish the authenticity of the ancient site. Those who argue for rebuilding point to the cultural obligation to restore lost heritage, using the original architectural fragments where possible. This debate revolves around whether the architectural structure is more important or the story of its destruction. The emptiness of the niches is now a central part of the site's identity, a permanent reminder of the forbidden history.
Bamiyan has become a global metaphor for the threat faced by cultural heritage in conflict zones. Its fate influenced the creation of international treaties and response mechanisms aimed at protecting sites like Palmyra in Syria or the ancient sites in Iraq. The scale of the Bamiyan destruction shocked the world into acknowledging that ideological warfare targets not just people, but the architectural expressions of their history and identity. The two silent voids serve as a constant architectural alarm, warning against the dangers of extremism and the constant need to safeguard shared human history expressed in stone and clay.
The Buddhas were the crowning achievement of the Grandeur school, which profoundly influenced Buddhist architecture and sculpture across Central and East Asia, China, Korea, and Japan. Their loss is a break in this architectural lineage. The techniques, the fusion of styles, and the sheer ambition of the Bamiyan figures informed subsequent colossal statues across the continent. Thus, their destruction did not just affect Afghanistan, it amputated a key piece of the global history of monumental religious architecture, creating an architectural disconnect in the historical flow of artistic influence.
In conclusion, the Bamiyan Buddhas were magnificent architectural and engineering feats, seamlessly integrating sculpture and the mountain landscape to create sacred space. Their tragedy was not one of natural disaster, but of deliberate political and ideological proscription. The massive effort required to destroy them only confirms their architectural resilience. The fact that the most poignant condemnation came from the wider Islamic world, a deep mourning for a shared past, underscores that this was a political war waged against culture, not a religious necessity. The niches remain as the most powerful architectural memorial of the 21st century, a permanent monument to intolerance.
The empty niches are a profound architectural statement, a deliberate void that forces contemplation. They teach us that architectural masterpieces, particularly those with deep spiritual meaning, hold a power that even massive explosions cannot fully extinguish. The memory of the Buddhas persists in the absence of the stone. This emptiness challenges us to understand the complex history of places like Afghanistan, reminding us that cultural richness often arises from the confluence of many traditions, and that attempts to enforce a narrow, exclusive worldview often begin with the systematic destruction of buildings.
The story of Bamiyan offers a universal call to action, to protect our common global heritage, especially the architecture that defines our shared human journey. The loss of these figures is a loss for every individual, regardless of their faith or nationality. These forbidden masterpieces, now vanished, serve as guardians of memory, reminding us that the greatest structures are those built upon tolerance and cultural acceptance, and that the duty to remember is as vital as the duty to build.
The Bamiyan Buddhas stand as a stark, empty testament to the price of ideological warfare against architecture. If this deep investigation into cultural loss resonated with you, please subscribe to Vanished Grandeur and share your thoughts. Do you believe the niches should be rebuilt or remain as a memorial to the atrocity? Let us know in the comments below. Next time, we move from the mountains of Central Asia to the ancient heart of the Mediterranean to explore another catastrophic loss, the Temple of Zeus at Olympia, decades of forgotten glory. We will investigate how a series of powerful earthquakes buried one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, and why its location remains a sacred but architecturally ruined site. Which ancient wonder's disappearance interests you most?